In this video, I'm going to cover the Common tab in Render Settings. Other videos should cover whatever selected renderer you have, mental ray, hardware, or software. So this is just going to hit the Common tab. So the first thing to check is your project set? So this is showing you what your project is plus your images directory. So you can name this whatever you want. This is basically where it's going to put stuff. If you wanted to change that, you just do change project image, and then you can change this. Like let's say for instance you wanted it to go in a folder called renders. Then it will go into renders. And again, this is coming from your project. So if this isn't set up properly, make sure you go under File and set that project up. Okay, and by default it's going to use the file name. I want this to be maybe something else. Hardware Bob. Name it whatever you like. Image format, I would typically choose a ping, and IFF is the default output, but some programs can take IFFs and some can't. Basically everything can take a ping sequence, so I'll just use ping. Ping also is a lossless compression, so it will look just like it's uncompressed, but it will be much smaller to store on disk. Okay, in frame extension here, I need to go ahead and choose something other than a single frame, which is Maya's default. Typically I use name number dot extension. It's just a fail-safe. Some programs used to not like an extra dot here. If you prefer the way it looks with any of these others, feel free to choose them. This has just been real fail-safe for me. The frame padding is basically the total number of digits in your last frame. Use that as the padding. So currently I have 2 here, so I'd have 2 digits of padding, and that gives me a 0, 1. And if I was rendering up to 350, then I would have 1, 2, 3 digits, so I'd use 3 there, and I'd have 0, 0, 1. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm actually only going to render to frame 80, so that takes care of our frame range as well. I don't need to renumber, but you can there if you needed to. This is something that trips up a lot of renders. You have the wrong camera selected, so make sure in here that you select the camera that you intend to render from. So in my case it's called shot 1. And then typically by this point you will have already set up your aspect ratio, because you'll have been doing a lot of animation to it and render tuning and that sort of business. So I'm not going to change that. I could up my width and height here to full HD if I wanted to, but I don't particularly need to here either. So that's basically it for the common settings. If I had already set up all the other settings that I needed to in hardware or mental ray, if I was rendering in mental ray, then I would be ready to batch render. And to do that, you just make sure you're in the rendering menu set, go to render, and then batch render. And when you let that go, it'll save your file and then kick it off and start throwing all those images into the directory wherever you set it up to go. So batch process, by the way, is a completely separate process from Maya. I could actually X out of Maya right now and it would still complete the batch render and everything would go well. So that's a good thing to know. If you kick off a batch render and the GUI, Maya GUI crashes, or someone closes it or something like that, your batch is probably still just going in the background. So that's it for common. And you can actually see with hardware how quickly it chews frames up. So that's a huge advantage of going with a hardware renderer. All right.